I didn't say torture. I didn't use the word torture. No.
Khalid, let me
No. I said you have to take people into consideration.
You know, Muhammad Ayub Pandit, who was lynched 2 years ago.
Which means we want our Pakistan without Hindu men. But what about now? For 30 years, I think the biggest betrayal for us personally than the Exodus is this complete denial.
Religion and civilization are interchangeable terms in terms of when we talk in the Indian context.
You know, I have a serious problem. I'll just make a small interjection. I have a serious problem with this thought process and this kind of a mindset that has been erupting since August 5th decision that, you know, these 8 million people who are only Muslim in Kashmir are being subjected to torture, they're being killed, and, you know, you are branding this entire population into Islamists, and these are radicals.
I didn't say torture. I didn't use the word torture. No.
Khalid, let me
No. I said you have to take people into consideration.
You know, Muhammad Ayub Pandit, who was lynched 2 years ago outside the main mosque of...
I know, I have reported that story with you, Aditya.
Was not an Islamist.
I have reported that story with you, Aditya, but I was not talking about torture.
On August, was not an Islamist. So we need to realize that there's a large chunk of silent majority that will speak up now. They have their rights. They have now been given power. It's not an easy battle. It's going to be a long haul. But certainly, I see that they are not Islamist. There is a silent majority out there, and we need to back them.
No, there are.
Thank you.
No, I would like to respond to what Khalid said. Of course, it's a fact that. When Kashmiri Pandits were brutally killed in their houses, in offices, or on streets, there were also some people among the majority community who were being killed by the same terrorists. But, you know, I was there. I was 13, 14 years old when it was all unfolding in front of my eyes. And from that experience, from that lived experience, I'm not ready to give a clean chit to the majority community in Kashmir. I'll say why, I'll explain why. On the night of 19th January, hundreds and thousands of people, when the number of militants was maybe 200, 300, 400, 500, 60 lakh people among Kashmiri Muslims in the valley in 1990. Hundreds of thousands of them in mosques, saying slogans like, and I would like to put this on record as I always do, in Kashmiri, Asigas Pannui Pakistan Batta Rusti Batnansan, which means we want our Pakistan without Hindu men, but with their women. And this was going across all mosques in Kashmir Valley. I have personally witnessed processions of about 700,000 people on the streets of Kashmir, wearing shrouds, hurling expletives at Kashmiri Pandit girls in Srinagar. We have records of Kashmiri Pandit doctors, engineers, professors being killed. I was just speaking to a young woman who works with Economic Times now. Her grandfather was 52 and he was a revenue officer. The man was led by his close friend and abducted, and his body was found hanging the next day, riddled with bullet marks. We know the story of the young telecommunication engineer B.K. Ganju, who was killed in a rice drum because a neighbor in Old Srinagar pointed out his whereabouts to militants, Bitta Karate. We know what happened to Naveen Sapru. As he was being shot, there was a macabre dance of people around him. Okay, let's for a minute say that there was pressure on Kashmiri Muslims also. But what about now? For 30 years, I think the biggest betrayal for us personally than the Exodus is this complete denial of the circumstances that led to the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. You speak to I'll just take a 30 seconds. You speak to any Kashmiri Muslim, even in most of private conversations, you speak to a taxi driver, you speak to a professor, अरे आपको तो बड़ी गलती हो गई, बहुत गलती हो गई साहब, आपको तो जगमोहन ने निकाला. अरे who was Jagmohan? Jagmohan was not there on the night of 19 January when this whole situation was unfolding. Jagmohan issued an open statement, an appeal to the Kashmiri Pandits on 23rd March 1990 that please do not leave Kashmir. We'll set up temporary camps for you within Badami Bagh cantonment. But every person takes a call depending on his or her threat perception. When my father's friends were killed, how could he stay back? We had to leave. Jagmohan was not any Pied Piper of Hamelin that he would play his flute and all Kashmiri Pandits would leave their home and hearth. It's just not possible.
Let me put this question to Ashish. Ashish, in the last 2 months, there has been a partial lockdown in Kashmir because of connectivity in mobile and internet. And we also know that one shopkeeper, 65-year-old shopkeeper, was shot dead by militants because he opened his shop during this lockdown. We also know there was another family of 4 who were shot at by militants for restoring their business. Wouldn't you give some leeway, some concession to the majority in Kashmir that they are also under threat? After all, 15,000 Kashmiri civilians have been killed by militants for defying them, for disagreeing with them, for opposing the call for azadi and separatism. Wouldn't you give some concession to the majority?
Aarti, I've already given that concession, but I think that, I am speaking more impartially, and I am not really interested in, pinning a moral blame on X or Y section of the society. What I'm interested in is the dynamics of a society, and these are more or less impersonal forces at play. And when I say that the minority rules applies in Kashmir, it is a rule that will apply regardless of the moral character of the people involved. The intransigent minority wins, and that is the case in Kashmir. Now, that I just want to add to what Aditya says about the religious nature of the problem. Religion and civilization are interchangeable terms in terms of when we talk in the Indian context. And therefore, I think most of the media and most of the conversations on Kashmir are skewed because they are framed incorrectly, and they are framed in what I would call the milieu of a narrative fallacy. Why? Because we are trying to find explanations to the problems, and we are so obsessed with addressing this cognitive itch about explaining what is going on in Kashmir, which is such a complex problem, that we look for small things like, oh, Farooq Abdullah wahan nahi tha, oh, Mufti Muhammad Saeed ka ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya. And these are all problems of real politics. That even today, as you said, there are so many mistakes being made. That is all fine. That will always go. That is the nature of politics. But if we don't look at it in a civilizational perspective, in terms of the change in demography that has been happening for the last 500 years, I think we are missing the elephant in the room. And that is that I completely agree with Aditya that it is a religious problem. And unless we look at it in terms of that 500-year history of how the community has been persecuted and how the demographics have been changing, I think we are missing the bus.